Malo tau mau, malo soy fua. Welcome everyone to the live digital kava session on the Polynesianized podcast. I am Mr. Aotearoa, straight from New Zealand, Auckland, Manurewa. Tua, how's your evening going? How you doing?
It is doing good. Um, it's been a good week. Been busy with work, but excited to join the Polynation this evening
Yes,
and have another live digital kava session here, Mr. Aotearoa. Please feel free to add to the super chat if you want your comments to be
yes, sir.
recognized, and appreciate the contribution. Our next topic, kind of interesting here. Let me find it real quick. It is share the tab, bring this to the stage. This is someone posted this on social media. I'll just press play real quick. It's on mute because I don't want the music playing. But as you can see, it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
list of countries.
Mm-hmm.
And who did this? Tongan Ninjas. Oh, it's a Tongan Ninja post here.
Okay.
Um, and what I find interesting here is oldest countries as far as government and established territories.
Mm.
So, a couple things that stick out to me is, and we make this claim, right? We make the claim online that Tonga is the oldest active self-governing civilization to this day,
Mm-hmm.
and there are these other countries above us, but we have maintained our self-governance for thousands of years, and this is kind of cool. Even if we take that out, the fact that Tonga is on that list is pretty exciting, right?
Yes, sir.
Polynesian nation is on the table, and that's something that everyone should be proud of in Polynesia, because there wouldn't be a Polynesian nation if there wasn't Hawaii, New
Yeah.
Zealand, Samoa, Wallis, Futuna, Rotuma, Fiji, parts of Fiji in there. So thought that was pretty cool to have that on the list. Now, granted, that says 900 CE, right? We would say that Tuitonga is more close to at least 450, but then through
Mm-hmm.
Tangaloa going into the BC. So we would at least be breaking into the BC age groups. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and just wanted to bring that up for some thoughts, Mr. Otero.
Hey man, I think we've kind of mentioned it before. I think a lot of our current Polynesian people in today, I think we just need to give more credit of our ancestors what they did before, because look at that, man. That's among the old one of the oldest civilizations on earth. Egypt, China, some of these Japan, Ethiopia, Greece. With all their philosophers and stuff, like, man, we just need to give more credit to our ancestors of what they created with the Polynesian civilization, man. Um, not easy to maintain and make it long lasting, and it's even and we did advocate that Tonga is probably the active rulers, even from beyond, coming from the Tangaloa all the way to the current lines of kingship monarchy that we can all be proud of, because I don't know if there's any active oldest civilization that have the same monarchy from the ancient times to now, that have political power and still maintain authority. Because a lot of them are very, like, especially like Japan, the emperor is very more of an image. They don't have any
Hmm.
political power, while our king of Tonga still holds political power within how government run, and that's the same kind of, not as much as before, but it's still political authority to say and influence in government, just like the Tangaloa times to the Tui Tonga, Tui Hatangalawa, and to the Tui Kangpolu with the Fario Tupo. So that's just my thoughts there, Tua.
Yeah. The other interesting thing and I know Greece was typically a democracy. Ethiopia, they had an emperor, but lost the emperor. Japan, I don't know if it's the same ruling family from 600
Okay.
BC,
Okay. I
right?
don't
I
know that.
don't
I'm
think
not too.
that's,
Okay.
yeah. And then Persia, don't know a ton about Persia, how long the same ruling family was in there. China obviously was the emperor, multiple emperors. The Mongols, right? The
Mm,
Mongolians came. A lot of influence from Mongolia because it was males from Mongolia that came into China for a long time. So those have changed through different lines, not the same family. Egypt, same thing with Egypt, went through different lines, wasn't always the same line, and even had, Cleopatra, where a lot of people say are could have been even like a Greek, had a lot of
mm,
Greek or Roman blood in her. What another unique thing about what Tonga brings to the table, it's the same ruling family,
yeah.
right? It's the same family. Tangaloa to Itonga, son of Tangaloa. From Laufini Tonga to Po the First, they're cousins. It's the same family. So another really unique thing that Tonga brings to the table that I don't know that anybody else can say, it's the same family that has been ruling for thousands and thousands of years.
Mm,
That's something that I thought we could probably draw from that as something being unique.
yes, sir. Definitely. Definitely. Has withstand the test of time, that's for sure. With all
Hmm.
these movements of individual rights and all of these things, this change of time. So it's awesome.
And then active constitution. I'm pretty sure probably an older constitution than all those countries.
Yep, that's for sure. I think the oldest is oldest with being utilized at this moment is the US, and then I know for a fact I think it's got to be Tonga, man, you know, after
So
that
that's
for
another interesting thing. The other one that I think interesting is out of the ones all above Tonga, none of them are maritime empires. Tonga is the only real maritime. Japan, I wouldn't
mm,
is a bunch of islands, but I wouldn't call that a maritime empire. They kind of just governed over those four major islands. So very unique. I mean, there's a lot of unique things that Tonga was able to bring to the table in regards to this list, but kind of really cool to see that.
yeah, no, very cool, very cool.
And just for a lot of the, for the listeners, I probably should have read it out earlier. But this list says oldest countries as far as government and established territories. Oldest number one was Egypt, 3100 BC. Second, China,
Mm,
2070 BC. Jaran or Persia, which is 550 BC. Japan is number four, 660 BC. Ethiopia is number five, 980 BC. Greece, 800 BC. And then they have in seventh place Tonga, 900. So really kind of cool. I mean, I thought that was just
yep.
kind of a cool thing to kind of recognize and bring that for some commentary here on the show. Next topic. If you have anything else to add to this, Mr. Atero.
Nope, nope. Very cool. Just very cool, and it's good to share this with our viewers.
Next one here is we haven't heard too much from King Afa
Oh
lately.
yeah,
We've had
our
some
brother is back.
commentary that he's had, but he has a kind of a new video that I thought was interesting that we can listen to and then comment on.
In you is Samoans and Tongans are the same. What would you say?
Tongans and Samoans, they wrote me and told me that Tongans and Samoans were the same people. Yeah, if we're discussing people as people, generalizing people, we're humans.
We're
Tongans and
humans.
Samoans, Tongans, and
Five
let's
fingers
just
and five toes.
say we're the same people. After I delivered a discussion of the difference between a Tongan and a Samoan, those Tongans and Samoans who believe they were the same people. If the Tongans travel to Samoa, American Samoa, or Samoa, and tell the government of Samoa they want a Samoan passport because we were the same people. These Tongan people who believes that Tongans and Samoans are the same people. Why don't you travel to Samoa and tell the Ali Makai in Samoa and all the Makais in Samoa to give you land, and you register those land as yours as a Samoan, because Tongans and Samoans are the same people. Why don't you practice the Kaupo of the Samoans? Why do you practice Fahu system? Samoans don't believe in Fahu. The Samoans and Tongans who believe that we're the same people. All those Samoans go to Tonga, tell the government of Tonga that you want a Tonga passport and you want to own land in Tonga because you are Tongan. You are the same people as Tongans. The Samoans who believe that Tongans and Samoans are the same people. Those of you who believe in the Tokouso, okay. Can you wear the coat of arms of Tonga? Can you wear the coat of arms of Tonga? The Samoans who believe that we
Also,
Tongans and Samoans are the same people. Can you wear kahokakala like Tongans? Because Samoans don't wear kahokakala. These Tongans who believe that we are the same people as Samoans, why don't you carry the Samoan weapon when you perform Taolunga? These Tongans and Samoans who believe that we're the same people, why do you bring a toa to your cover club? Because Samoans don't have toa. When Samoans mix fire, they do not have a toa. So here's the question: are we the same people? Those Tongans and Samoans who believe that we are the same people, let me ask the Samoans: do you believe that one man can be the ruler? How one man can make the ultimate decision? His Majesty, a king.
So people are asking you,
sucks, Mr. Atero.
Um, so there's different things here I wanna explore and discuss. Very good, King Alpha. Just just speaking his mind, and that's what we like. People who want to
That's
speak
what
their
we
mind.
do at the Kava session.
Yes, that's what we
Throw the
do.
idea out there. Ay,
Yes,
kita Noah.
when you participate in the live digital cover session, you got to have a open mind. So
Yes.
King Alpha is definitely having an open mind here and just exploring here. The thing I would say is we are one people, and like what you said, we just do things differently, and it's only been very differentiated now because of how time has gone with the whole 1800s of colonization, the less going back and forth, the eroding of the Tuitonga empire, right? So we're not as cohesive how we used to be, but now how we still had our differences here and there, but it wasn't a much big different of how it is now, I would say.
Mhm.
So I would go against King Alpha on that. We are one people. We just do things differently. And him saying about the passports, that's a Western thing of just protecting your borders, right? Um, of how you do things now. But before then, your passport was if you married to certain clans, you don't need
Yeah.
you go to that particular clan within that village and you stay within that region or whatever that may be. And in my understanding, you can still you can still get land if you want if you stay in Samoa. I've met many Tongans in Upolu and in Savai and in American Samoa that actually can hold dual passports of Samoan because they've lived there for many years, married to a Samoan woman, and they've been participating in their family affairs and actually have Matai titles and have access to that land where their wives are from. And in Samoa, there's also freehold land that you can actually buy outright if you're a Samoan citizen, and you can buy it out. You don't need a Matai to buy freehold land. So that's my thing there with my time being in Ha'amoa and my understanding. And then if it'll be a lot more difficult for a Ha'amoa to come to Tonga because a lot of the lands are really tied in from father to son. Yeah, so it's only maybe if a Samoan woman that married to a Tongan or you know Bava'u Tongan male or Tongatapu Tongan male that can have access, their offspring can have access to that land. But you know, a Ha'amoa can come, stay in Tonga for some years, get Tongan citizenship, and can lease land. I mean, you cannot really have old land, but you can lease it to 50 or to 99 years. But that's how we operate in the modern days. But back in the days, we were all one people, and the specific nuance that we kind of do in our each of our islands have only been drastically different because of the separation and colonization that's happened in the Polynesian nation. But back in the days, language was one, in my opinion. Language was one. A lot of our cultural practices were, not too different. It wasn't too
Mhm.
different. Like I bring the example of William Mariner when they said you want to play the Ha'amoa way, which is beating them until they can't move, or the Tongan way is once you knocked it, not or the Tongan way of doing the game, you knock them once, and then once they fall, that's the end of the game. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just that little nuance, and I think it wasn't that, like I mentioned many times, wasn't that drastic different back in the days. It's just now there is a huge difference, not a huge difference, but a good difference of how we do things now because of separation and not practicing. And that's the big thing, because we lost the inasi and the polo polo tradition. That's kind of brought the whole empire together, and that we can get to mingle and kind of coexist for that particular time, that kind of lost our cohesiveness to us. So once the Tuitonga eroded and we're not practicing the polo polo and the inasi, that's when we kind of just say we tend to fall on our own and practice our own culture within our own island in those days. That's just me.
Yeah, I do find I appreciate King Alpha's perspective. He does think outside the box, right?
Yeah,
That's a flexible mind, is a curious mind. So I appreciate
yeah,
that with King Alpha. I agree 100%. The idea of the passports is a
mm,
Western construct, and it is why we have different nations that didn't exist previously,
yeah,
right? And his own point actually shows that there was a time that we were the same people, because he says, does Ha'amo believe that one guy has the right to make the rule or the decision? So that's a he's making a very interesting distinction
yeah,
there, because, like we said, some people get offended when we say this, but I think it's a fair observation. Samoa or Samoa as a nation never existed until colonization. And why? How can we say that with relatively confidence? They never had a consistent unified ruler,
mm,
right? Like they didn't have that. So how can you say you were a nation prior to colonization when you didn't have a unified leader for long periods of time? Now, he kind of King Afa is kind of focusing on the Western separation and breakup of the Polynesian Empire, but you could also look at it as also proving that we were potentially one people. Because
yeah,
if they didn't have the unifying ruler, then where was the unifying ruler? And what we're
mm,
trying to say is, well, the unifying ruler, like you mentioned, through the Inasi and the Polo Polo, was the Tuitonga. That is where the unified ruler. And as we learned in some of our discussions, decentralized power is the example of Ha'amoa is found throughout Polynesia, right? That there's decentralized power throughout Polynesia except for one place, Tongatapu, where the king resided, or the Tuitonga resided. So that to me makes the argument, even though he takes the position that, oh yeah, there's two different systems, but I would ask the question, dig a little deeper. Why are there two different systems? If Samoa has a decentralized system,
Mm,
couldn't that indicate that they were never an independent nation until colonization? And
mm,
really, what that points to is where was the centralized power? Well, we obviously, Masi, we take a different position than King Afa, and that's a Tonga is where the centralized power was, and it was all one nation and one people. And that's something that I think is really important to recognize. And it's really important for us to, I mean, how do we say this without trying to offend a lot of people, because we get accused of a lot of things online, um, is all of Polynesia can lay claim that our civilization survived colonization. And that does not have to be quote unquote uniquely Tongan, right?
yeah,
Because we take the view of it was a Polynesian nation,
yeah.
the fact that a part of the Polynesian nation survived is something that everyone in Polynesia should be proud of and say, yes, that is a part of our civilization that was able to endure and overcome it. And I think I think he's kind of taking an easy way out by saying, yeah, we aren't the same people,
Hmm.
by just saying we have different passports and you can't buy land in different systems. I was like, well, no, we agree. Those are slightly different. But like you said, half of that is because Apalangi took over and said, this is how we will behave. You will
Mm,
have a nation, they will have a nation, and you will need a passport to go back and forth.
yep.
But I mean, I think if you just dig a little bit deeper, I think King Afa would have to concede, in my opinion. Okay, at the very least, there was a possibility we're the same people. Captain Cook thought we were the same people. He went all over Polynesia and he said, these people look the same, they speak the same language, they have the same culture, right?
Mm,
And maybe that's why he went to Tonga three times more than, and he went to Tonga more than anywhere else, is because he said, hey, I was there at the Inasi. This kind of looks like the center of this nation. I need to spend maybe a little more time around this area because they seem to be more organized, more peaceful, more agriculturally advanced, and the leadership seems to be a lot more sophisticated than the leadership I was finding throughout the nation. So we have to at least take that into account. But as always, appreciate King Afa and his
yeah.
thoughts. But
Hey,
I think we think very differently.
yes, stimulating the conversation, man. He's just sharing his ideas, and that's a good thing. Being able
Yeah,
to share ideas,
I think
talk about
you know, Huatalanoa, he's causing
yeah,
people to have discussions,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think that's important. I mean, that's why we have the live digital kava sessions. We need more people talking about these things. The more people talk about
yep,
it, the more ideas compete, and the more the ideas compete, we believe that the best ideas will rise to the top, and the viewers of the Polynesian Eyes podcast can make their determination on which idea they associate and believe with more than others.
yep, 100%.
So I know King Afa is very popular with the Ha'amoa brothers and sisters because he says they're says some things that they don't appreciate. But hey, like you said, he's stimulating the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. The more, and this is another thing. The more conversations we can have about our origin stories and about each other and within Polynesians, the more conversations we have, maybe the less time over time we'll take less offense because at least we're talking about it. I think people take offense when people share ideas because there's not many discussions that's actually happening about Polynesian history and Polynesian origin story. That's in my opinion.
No,
But
I 100% agree with that. Mr. Aotearoa, and that's why it's important to have those conversations,
Yes, sir.
right? To
Yep.
really drive, and then you just think about it. Does it make sense? Like, you know, there's been some chatter that we come from Tahiti, Polynesia comes from Tahiti, and then you're like, but there's overwhelming evidence it started in Western Polynesia and moved east. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I don't know. You just
Yeah.
gotta dig around, dig around.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Mr. Aotearoa?
Nope. I think we covered it pretty well regarding King Afa's thoughts that he shared with us. Unless any of the viewers had anything interesting or interesting angle or something they have, but other than that, I'm good.
Okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to go into the studio and we're going to go through some. I do try to respond to as many comments as possible,
Mm.
but we don't always get to all the comments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find, where's the comments section? It's been a while. Right here.
Is this on our which platform is
Social
this one?
media. I'm going
Social
to
media.
YouTube right now.
Okay. Okay. All right. No, that's really good. For our viewers there, if you have a question that you want us to kind of touch on or to explore, the super chats available that we will answer them. So just letting you guys know. All right. Looks like
So
we got.
here's one, Masi. If you want to read the one where it says Samoa Moni, he
Okay.
asked this question.
So there is a Ha'amaui in Tonga, but no Ha'atangaloa. In Samoa, there is a Sa'atangaloa. The Sa in Samoan is equivalent to the Ha'a in Tongan. So if there is no Ha'atangaloa in Tonga, and there is a Sa'atangaloa in Samoa, along with many chiefs bearing the Tangaloa name as a title, then isn't that proof that Tangaloa was originally from Samoa? I know I had a discussion briefly with you, by the way. Tua, what's your thoughts there? First crack at it.
Yeah. So a couple things that come to mind with this question, and I appreciate Samoa Moni bringing this up. Is this? Is there a Ha'atangaloa in Tonga? It's yes and no. It is no with the name, but yes with the bloodline. And I'll explain it this way. When Tangaloa installed Aho'eitu as the heir, or the person that would assume power,
Mm,
the reason why Tangaloa creates a new title for Aho'eitu as the Tu'itonga is because there's already an heir to the Tangaloa title.
mm-hmm,
And that's the oldest son that Tangaloa has. And this is probably where this practice originates from.
mm,
But when an existing title loses its lead or its primary role or a higher rank, you no longer carry that name. So the oldest brother becomes the Tu'ifareua, which
mm,
eventually becomes the Tu'iperehake, right? The name changes and you don't use the same name because that power and that influence and the role of that title has changed. And it's actually very biblical. This is actually a biblical thing. And that's why, maybe one of these days it'd be great to have Maui Tekelangi cover some of the practices and the traditions in Tonga for installing chiefs and kingly lines, how they're very close to Christian ordinances and practices. But when a role changes, the name changes. This is why Abram name changes and becomes Abraham. This is why Jacob's name changes from Jacob to Israel. When
mm,
the role and the purpose that you have changes and your responsibility changes, your name changes with it. So when the Tangaloa changed its role and its responsibility to the next heir, the name changed to Tu'ifareua, and then it changed its name and became the Tuiperehake. How do we know? Here's another piece of evidence. How do we know that this is true? And I just learned this in speaking with David Tafare. I didn't realize that there's still a Furitaunga to this day.
Mm,
And the
mm.
Furitaunga is only to one person.
Yes, that's their
Because
kava.
it's their kava. To this day, there's only one Furitaunga because the Tuitonga no longer carries the Furitaunga. It's the Tuiperehake because that's the line of Tangaloa. The line
Mm,
of Tangaloa still carries the Furitaunga kava ceremony. And
mm,
so, because the Tupo line today, they were installed with a kava ceremony and a structure, they don't carry the change. And here's another thing: the change in the name from Tu'iha Takalaua to Tungi, right? There was a change in the name because the role and the responsibility of that title had switched. So my response, that's my long way of saying there is a Tangaloa line heir to this day. It just doesn't go by that name in following of ancient Tongan and Tangaloa type or tradition of changing the name. And so, yeah, that would be my position. The other thing too that I thought was interesting, according to Xiaoxi Ilayu, there's many many oral histories about Tangaloa, but the very earliest one on how the Tangaloa name got to Haamoa was because the reigning Tangaloa liked the guy's wife or his daughter, and in exchange to marry or to go with the daughter, gave the guy the name.
mm.
So it wasn't even like, oh yeah, it was a father to son, father to son. It
Or
was,
bestowal away. It was just
yes, it was a
yeah,
trade,
yeah.
right? And then here's the other thing. If the Tangaloa title still exists in Haamoa, why is that not the most powerful title in
Mm,
Haamoa, right? Or at least the most recognized or older or the most unifying power. Instead, we have what the Tu'itonga said as Marietoa as one of the most powerful titles, and then some of the others, the Tu'imanua and the Tu'iana, and some of these other titles that came up. So that's my long answer to that question, Mr. Aotearoa.
No, and I'm just gonna add to your thoughts here. Good question by Samuel Moni. With the understanding of why it's important to change your name when that title is no longer the top rank or the top status, and because its role changed. Um, the Tuitonga changed into the current Kalanivalu, and also the Tuiha Tagalawa changed from that to the Tungi. So that's just
Mm,
evidence of how Tongans, the little nuances, which is could be different of how Samoa does it. Samoa Moni, which is fine. They just take up the name for the name's sake or whatever. But you like what just like kind of like what you mentioned, Tua, the Tangaloa role is not really the highest title in Samoa because we all know, and that's why that's the way. See, the name carries so much meaning that Tangaloa had to change it, like what you said, Tua, when its role changed, the Tui Whareua, and then went to the current the Tui Perehake. Now, because its
mhm,
role changed, the name means so much, or the titles mean so much that you don't just use it for the sake of just using it. You change it. It's almost like and it could be maybe a Tonga Tapu etiquette because and I'm sharing with recent examples of the Tuitonga Laufiri Tonga. After him, many generations after, they changed from Tuitonga to the Kalanivalu, which is different because the role is changed. The Tuihatagalawa, same thing. After a couple generations, the role changed and it's now a Tungi, right? So that's how it is, and that's why it's no longer being used that way. But like what you mentioned, the people's genealogy are still existing today. The names just change. So yeah, that's just my thoughts there.
no, 100%. Here is another comment. I think I'll read and then have you do the first response there, Mr. Aotearoa. And it
Okay.
says, this is also from Samoa Moni. He's been asking some good questions. He said, and this is in regards to the Tui Tonga, the Tongan Empire being the longest self-governing and the same family, right? Up to
Mm-hmm.
from the past up till now. He says, I thought the Tui Tonga and the Tupou lines were two different royal families. If they I'm or if they are related down the line, but those of Tutupu Kanukupolu line were never Tui Tongas. Hence, there were two different royal dailies that rule. That is my understanding, but I'll accept correction. So basically, what he's saying is
Mm.
the Tui Tonga and the Tui Kanukupolu were different lines and not of the same royal family.
All right. So, good question, Samo Moni. Thank you for always writing some good comments, man. Um, my understanding, it is within the same family, and not only that, that's only been re-strengthened with the marriage of Queen Salote and Tungi, which is a closer title, closer lineage, I would say, closest lineage to the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatagalawa side. So remember, the Tui Tonga was created, and then there was the Tui Tonga's, is it brother, I believe, was created the Tui Hatagalawa. So that's within the same family. And then the Tui Hatagalawa had a son. Remember, that's the same family son that starts the Tui Kanukupolo. So that's all the same within the same family, Samuel Moni. So there no, it's not like a different royal line from somewhere else or something away from Tongatapu. It's all within the Tongatapu lineage of royalties. Tui Tonga, which is a son of Tangaloa, right? So you can even go further than that. The Tui Tonga, the Tangaloa, and
Mhm.
then the Tui Tonga, he makes his brother. The reason why he creates his brother because his father got assassinated, so he kind of, let's just say, delegates power, and he goes on to, maybe that's when we know with the oral history that we have shared that they moved their residence to Ha'amoa for many 5 generations. So then the Tui Hatagalawa, which is a brother of the Tui Tonga, gets installed with that name, runs the admin and the carrying of the people, and then not not long after the Tui Hatagalawa, he has a son, which is Ngata, becomes the Tui Kanupolo, and he runs the everyday admin for the Tui Tonga Empire. So those are the three royal lines. It's all within the same family, Samomoni. It's not different or separated by any means, and that was only re-strengthened, especially with the marriage of Queen Salote being the Tui Kalupolu holder with Tungi, which is has closer, and it's all about just everyone's related. It's just seeing who's the closest. Are you arms length? Are you arms length of being closer to the Tui Atalawa or Tui Tonga, or are you whatever? Now it's just all about who's closer because everyone has those ties. It's just stating your genealogy, or oh, are you closer? Okay, you're probably closer than what I am. I'm a bit few generations away. That's all the conversation now is with
Mm.
the, let's just say, nobility and the royal families, so especially the dynasty of the Tui Tonga, Tui Hadagalawa, and the Tui Kanupolo. So that's just my thing, my answer to that, Tua. I don't know if you had anything different or
No, 100%. I agreed. I think the couple things I would add to that is as these lines are running in parallel, they're intermarrying with the Tuitonga. So it's
yeah.
reinforced multiple times. So it is the same family lines, including the Tuikan Kupolo. Um, the other thing that's very important to understand is the Tuikan Kupolo line itself is directly tied to the
Mm,
Tuitonga. And many times descendants of the Tuitonga and descendants of the Tuihadakalaua
yeah.
were
Tui Kan-
Tuikanukupolus many times over because there appeared in the oral history a lot of instability in the Tuikanukupolu line. And there are even instances when the heir the heir to the Tu'iha Tangaloa line was asked to
Mm,
take on the title of the Tu'ikanukupolu until they were now to assume the title of Tu'iha Tangaloa. So these lines are intertwined over many generations and they originate from the same family.
mm, mm,
The only real difference I think caused a lot of confusion and why a lot of our brothers and sisters in Ha'amoa, because they don't understand in our system in the capital or the consolidation of power in the empire is so different than what is practiced every day in Ha'amoa, that when a lot of our brothers and sisters from Ha'amoa came to Hihifo, and Chelsea Eliu talks about this a little bit, especially towards the very end of the Tui Kanukupolo. The definition, according to Chelsea Eliu, of Eiki
yeah.
changes. And
Mm,
what does it change from? Eiki just referred to, like what you were saying, Masi. Who's closest to the Tuitonga? That was the
mm,
definition of Eiki. And the more Eiki you were, meant that you were closer to the line of the Tuitonga. And that is why sometimes it was difficult to find people to step into the Tuikanukupolu's line because it was the lowest. It was viewed, and if you were a descendant and had a direct tie to the Tuihatagalaua or the Tuitonga, taking the role of Tuikanukupolu, even though it is still within the family, kind of looked like a downgrade, right?
yeah.
And so it was very difficult to find people as this line destabilized, to find people to fill in that role. And then to make it even worse, I guess, if you want to, I don't know if it's worse or not, but the Tuikanukupolu has to have Ho'eiki underneath him, but the Tuitonga and the Tuihatakalaua are still on Tonga Tapu, and
In
a
the
lot
same
of his
island.
in the same island, and his cousins, because that's what Eiki means. It means we're the same family.
Yeah.
We share the same genetic bond. It's very difficult for the Tuikanukupolu to go to his cousins at the Tuihatakalaua and the Tuitonga line and say, "Can you come and serve me?" When
Yeah.
my role exists to serve you. So what
Yeah.
happens is there's the appearance of people from Ha'amoa coming to Hihifo, and then Xiaoxi Ilayu says that the definition of Eiki changes, which is Eiki used to be just your blood, which
Yeah.
is the Tui Kanukupolu himself, the Tui Hatakalaua and family, the Tui Tonga and family. But with the nobles of the Tui Kanukupolu, it was, I gave you a title. Now you're a Eiki because I need you to do the work with me. I need you to help me do the work of the Tui Kanukupolu. So I think that made it, probably made it look and appear that it was a whole separate line, right? Because there is this importing of people from Ha'amoa, but the reality is, at the end of the day, they are the same family. And we even make the argument that Tupo the First was doing the job of the Tuikanukupolu and bringing the government and the administration of the government into order, which is
Yeah.
the responsibility of the Tuikanukupolu.
Yeah.
So those are the thoughts there, Mr. Atearo.
No, awesome. I think we covered that comment really well. Anything that stands out, Dor? Anything else?
There's another one here that pops up. It's a relatively long question, but I think we will close out the live digital conversation today with this comment.
Want me to read it? I can read it.
Yes, and this is from A2676.
All right. Can you please touch on Tonic and Samoanic languages? And if Samoa wasn't the base for expansion or an empire, then why are majority of Polynesian languages considered Samoanic and only Tongan and Niuean is Tongnic? Does this have something to do with different dialects? In the Royal Tongan dialect closer to that of Samoanic, which could show that the elites of Tonga were able to use Samoa as a base. I have previously thought that the Tafaifa and the royals of Tonga, three bloodlines, are the elites of the one nation Samoa and Tonga once was. And I thought perhaps the elites of both modern day nations speak a similar dialect in some ways. I'm asking these questions and putting this forward as Samoans use the whole Samoanic languages to show Tu'imanua existed and was the force that started expansion. But expansion is in line with the time Tuitonga Auetu is said to have started the empire. Good question, and I think you touched on this in one of your episodes, Tua, with the Samoanic and Tonganic languages. So I'm gonna give a first stab at it.
Yeah, so it's this is what I always joke about, what I call the one data point analysis, right? Is you have someone who sees this, where it says the Tongic family tree is just Tonga Niue, and then the Samoic family tree has pretty much all of Polynesia tied to it, right?
Mm,
But then we went back, so that's what you kind of say. Oh, this study says that all these other islands are related to Ha'amoa, and therefore that's why the Tu'imanua is an empire, and Tu'imanua had more influence than the Tu'itonga. Well, we go and open up the study, and what the study says, do you know how we made these groupings? The groupings were Tongic because it changed the least, and
mm,
Samoic because these are all the languages, the Samoic, Tahitian, Hawaiian, were the languages that had the most amount of morpheme or change. So
mm,
it had very little to do with, oh, these language originate from Ha'amoa, but it looks like these languages went through more change than the than the Tongan language. And they say that the Tongan language is actually closer in relation to the Proto Polynesian language than the
mm,
Samoan or the Samoic. So, what does that mean? The way I interpret that is the Tongan language is older and morphed less than all the other languages. The Samoan language, like the other, like Tahitian, everything else, it went through more change because why? They got colonized. And some
mm.
of them even lost their language. Like Hawaiian had to be resurrected from the dead. I don't know if
Maori, same way.
Maori was the same way, had to be resurrected. So
Mm,
naturally, these changes over time would group them and make them more similar than the Tongic languages. So once again, using that one layer of analysis to say, oh, just because there's a bigger group here, they must be more related. No, they're more related because they all got colonized and their language went through more change than the Tongan. And why did the Tongan one and the Niuean? I don't understand why the Niuean one is in there, but the Tongan language morphed much slower because it was codified. Tonga remained sovereign, and their constitution was written into it. So they were able to preserve the older language for a much longer period of time.
mm. No, awesome input there. Tua, I 100% agree. The Samoanic languages were kind of closer to other islands, and the only thing you can draw the parallel to those is because of colonization, and that's why they went through rapid changes. Tongan language is probably the closest to what our Polynesian nation used back in the days. And why I can share that is because Tonga was never colonized, so our language is gonna go through less change compared to the our Polynesian brothers and sisters. So that's a good one. So it's not because of the Tu'imanua Empire kind of spreading and having their own kind of dialect or language um, kind of thing. It was just the colonization and the rapid changes that was happening, especially with the um, introduction of missionaries coming in and changing a lot of the languages under the empire. They were colonized by a Western empire, so whether that be England or Germany or whatever. So yeah, that's just my answer to that question. But thank you, A2, for that putting that comment forward, and hopefully that can answer that question. So
Want to
looks
read
like we got a comment.
Jay's? This is Jay. Jay's
Hmm.
pushing back on us. But go ahead and
Okay,
read Jay's
Jay,
comment here, Mr. Atero.
Maria, Jay. Jay's comment. Talk about when Tui Manua Empire ruled Tonga. All right, awesome question. Thank you, Jay. Tua, any thoughts on Jay's question here? Let's bring it to the
Jay,
Kava circle.
if you go back and look at some of our episodes on archaeological studies that were done on Tau Island
Mm,
in Manua, that they found that the Tui Manua is only 500 years old. Now, they like to blame the Palangi because only the Palangi went up to do the presentation, but there were Samoan scholars that were part of the study as well. Now, what makes that interesting,
mm,
okay, is this. If the Tui Manua is only 500 years old, then it would have been in the 1500s that the Tui Manua existed. But there is overwhelming evidence, right, that is the height of the Tonga Empire. So for everyone who says, oh, the Tui Manua Empire ruled over Tonga, and they actually talked about that in that study. The guy
yeah.
who did the presentation was, there's this great oral history about the Tui Manua, how it ruled over Tonga and Fiji. And then he says, there's only one problem. There's no oral history in Samoa or Fiji that the Tui Manua ever ruled in those
Mm,
areas. Now,
mm,
you can't say that about, even though we take a very different interpretation
yeah.
of quote unquote Tongan invasion of Ha'amoa. Ha'amoa as a nation never really existed, but there is confirmed oral history in Ha'amoa that the Tu'itonga was in Ha'amoa and was governing Ha'amoa according to popular oral history for 400 years, which is kind of interesting because that kind of sits very close to amount of time, 300 or 400 years, where the Tu'itonga lived in Ha'amoa, right? But
Mm,
anyways, long story short, what I'm trying to say this is the Tui Manua Empire, number one, probably never existed. And then number two, even if they said it existed, it would have existed when the Tu'itonga Empire was at its height. So not sure you can call it an empire. That's my thoughts there, Mr. Ataro. Anything to add about that?
nope. Thank you, Tua. Just to add on, we do believe there was a Tui Manua, but there's no evidence to say that it was beyond its borders, that there was such a empire or gathering of other Polynesian islands to Manua. So we've kind of shared maybe some of our ideas that Tui Manua had some close relationship to the Tui Tonga. It seems like, and really close. Um, that's why it was mainly the Tui Tonga residing in Upolu and Savai during his kind of time away from Tongatapu. But we're still trying to figure out. I think Siashi Ilayu gave his thoughts, saying that the Tui Tonga, or before, I think the Tui Tonga's mother was from Manua and took upon the
Mm.
title of the Tui Manua.
Kaulfo Nua Fekai.
Kau-
Yeah.
Kaulfe Nua Fekai took that title of the Tui Manua, but he was always referred to the Tui Tonga title because that was a superior title to the Tui Manua, but he took it because his mother was from there. So there's that idea. So those are the two ideas we kind of shared. So Jay, hopefully that answers your question.
Jay's on a roll. Here's his other one. He says, talk about how your King George changed the language, bro. I don't know exactly how that really ties into anything, Jay. So you're telling me Tupou the first single-handedly changed the language at the same time he wrote the Constitution in this new language that he changed it from, and somehow Tonga survived colonization while going through a whole language change? I don't know how that's even
Mm,
possible. I would assume if
mm,
there was a language change and you put that change into a constitution, that constitution wouldn't have survived. But
yeah.
what are your thoughts, Mr. Atero, on that comment?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what he means with change. I mean, do the Taufa Hao, he's one of the very few to actually write our language, like what we were verbalizing, to kind of write it. I know you've kind of brought that idea to that there was a written language way before, and maybe in some part that transition it
Hmm.
was kind of lost. But to my understanding, that Taufa Hao Tubo the first, apparently, from my understanding, when lots of people were like, when they were signing documents with some of the natives, the Palangis would say they would just put a handprint, but it was like Chelsea, Tupo the first, he was the only one that actually had a signature. Eh? And that just showed that he was able to put the language on paper to his liking, and it was the same thing that transitioned with the Constitution written in Tongan, which is, it's probably, is it the only Polynesian native language that was written on a document and ratified
Mm.
to us? That's pretty
Yeah.
cool, right? To have a Polynesian language in that, what, in the 1800s, because I think the Hawaiian Constitution, it was modeled after that, but it was written in Tongan. Those are some changes, but the Hawaiian Constitution was written in English, Palangi, just like the Treaty of Waitangi and the other things before it was kind of translated to the native language. But the, the original Constitution of Tonga was only in Tongan, and that was because that drive was because of Taufa Hao and his ability to read and write at such an early age compared to anyone in his time. So yeah.
My couple comments to that, Jay, is this: is first, this may be the if you're saying that King George changed the language significantly, then the Tongic language would be under the Samoic language, like all the other languages that were altered, right? Or resurrected and changed significantly. But that obviously is not the case, because what Tupo the First actually recorded is much closer to the Proto-Polynesian language.
Mm,
So what he did save actually made Tongan language more unique and more further away from the Samoic languages, right? So that's something that I think is really important, and I don't quite fully understand why talk about how your king changed the language.
mm,
Actually, the evidence of why there's a big difference between the Samoic and the Tongic languages is evidence that he didn't change or make things up. He was just recording how he understood the language and how to spell it out phonetically as
yeah.
needed into books to be able to write. So I actually take this as an explanation on why, Tonga really does have it's the language that it has today, and what makes it unique, and that it's actually a separator. And whatever King George Tupo the First preserved the Tongan language, not changed it. And
Yeah.
that's evidenced by the different namings, or the Samoic and the Tongic names. Last one from Jay. He says, that's not what your scholar Augustino Mahina said. Mr. Atero, what do we have to say to that? That
Hey,
Augustino is the one that
hey,
we need to get the approval
info.
from.
Hey, Augustino Mahina can say whatever he wants to say. This is an open-minded dialogue, and Jay, it's up to you to take his word for it, do more research, or you take it as what he says. It's up. You can do whatever you want, Jay, and just that goes for everybody else. We like Augustino Mahina, what he's done and what he shares. He has every right, just like Tua and I have every right to share our thoughts, and everyone can decide to see who's the most correct or who's the most wrong or whatever. It's a free world we live in, and that's how you let ideas compete. We love Augustino Mahina. We have engaged with him multiple times. I've said it, Jay. I've actually had Augustino Mahina in my house. I've actually faikava with him. We're very friendly and cordial with each other, and we just let the ideas just do the fight and the battle and the knife shanking and all of that. but That's my thoughts there. Tua, you have anything to Jay's comment?
No, nothing there. Maybe we can see if we want to give some love to the TikTok comments.
Oh,
Let's
okay,
um
okay.
let's go see what TikTok has going on for us. Activity, comments. Uh,
I, but I appreciate all the questions coming on the chat. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you, all the viewers out there. Appreciate it. Enjoying this Sabbath. Sabbath for me. Kava digital Kava live session, and it's still Saturday for those in the northern hemisphere from where you're at. Or is it Sunday for you
There's
now?
no
Tua?
langi in Samoa.
So that's yeah.
what was that, Mussy?
Is it Sunday already for you? Are we
It
all on the
is
same day?
Sunday. Yes,
Okay, so we're all on
for a
Sunday
couple
then.
hours. I was trying to just skim through some of the comments here, Mr. Atearoa, just to
No worries, no
see if
worries.
there's anything that sticks out here. I did see some. I try to comment on these as much as I can. Um, Let me see. Trying to find. Do you know what the Pai Pai Valu is, Masi?
Bye bye Valu. No, no, not familiar with that.
I'm wondering if that's the stars, because don't they have 8 things on the star mounts?
Oh, okay, probably. So that's the star mounts, but the star
I'm
mounts
just
are
guessing.
yeah, because they're you know some of the recent researchers are starting to say that the star mounts are more like a gaming for the matais or the hoekis during that time for pigeon snaring.
Yeah, well, that's why it's called Sia Heurupe, Tia Heurupe, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to see here. I thought I saw some comments.
So there's no langi in Samoa. So that's yeah, and he's just is another scholar here.
Let's do this video. We'll just do this video right here,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll watch it, and then we'll go through the comments because this one had a lot of comments here. A lot of people were a little sensitive with your responses here, Mr.
So
Aotearoa.
there's no langi in
Okay.
Samoa. So that's yeah, and he's
Can you
just is
hear it?
another scholar here, just perpetuating his thoughts of langi being in Samoa, which is highly disagree with because like what we said, there's a lot of very faulty areas or areas that's not cleared up. That if Samoa was where Langi started, why is there no significant evidence to prove that there was such a empire that started there? And even you know and even like just titles even predating the Tuitonga titles. There's no Samoan title that predates the Tuitonga. So there's a lot of holes and weak argument on that. So, but hey, give them props and like what we said, Bush Mahina, he's from Avao.
Any kind of context you want to add to that, Mr. Aotearoa, before we get into the comments?
Oh yes, sir. I still maintain that argument that when we refer to Langi as a resident of Tangaloa and a resident of the Tuitonga, so when probably people can misunderstood what I was saying that okay there is a langi because I know people will say okay well the langi there's a langi in Samoa if it's a reference to a mountain or to the sky okay yeah that's general but I'm gonna be clear now saying when I refer to langi as a resident of Tangaloa because that's what we're trying to understand was our origin and the only langi that exists in all of Polynesia as a resident of Tangaloa. We can point it to exactly where it is, which is in the central part of Tongatapu, in Tapuhia, where it's right now a wasteland, unfortunately. But that's where the Tangaloa Langi was at. And because that title was transitioned to the Tuitonga chose to maintain the same name for its residents as Langi. And all oral Polynesian stories always say we came from Langi, which is a reference to Tangaloa's residence, which he's the creator of Polynesia. So Samoa having a residence of Langi, there is no Langi in Samoa. I still maintain that unless it hasn't been discovered. Until then, until a Langi comes up, we can find out more about it. Because the only thing we can find in Samoa is just the pigeon snaring with the star mounds or the Sia He Lupe stuff, but that's like a game, and the Pure Mele, which is only a reference to. It's only been dated, and this is where archaeological ruins meet oral history with what we've known. That's a time where the Tuitonga, especially was it Kaulufonua Fekai, resided in
Mhm.
Haamoa, right? And then just some of the research we've done with the Tui Manua, the pits and stuff. That's very recent, only 500 years. So you can't come from Tui Manua if it's only 500 years. But the Langi is way beyond. And I could argue if we give access to we're only leaving to Nukureka right now because
Mhm.
that's already confirmed we're the oldest human settlement in Polynesia. If something comes up, I don't mind. Okay, then maybe we need to excavate if somebody is further than that than Tongatapu Nukureka. But we don't have to excavate anything further when we all know the evidence had found that human settlement is the oldest in Tongatapu in Nukureka. So that's just my thoughts there. Hopefully that clarifies it. But we're just having a conversation, and the more we can converse, the more we can have a better understanding of each other. It's not coming from a bad place. Like I said, I love Haamoa. I love Upolu and Savai. I spent 2 years there. I'm just speaking of what I know when I was in my time there, but we were discussing the residents of Tangaloa and the Tuitonga, which is referred to Langi, not to a sky or to a mountain. That is the common reference in some of our brothers and sisters from Haamoa saying I got it wrong, but I'm referencing the residents of Tangaloa, which is Langi. That's all.
Okay. So, real quick, we're going to pause real quick. Uh, some comments. UTOL says, Tua, Sio Mikey J. Okufia Mauke, Sio get evidence. Ha ha ha. What's the evidence that Jay's looking for? Jay says, where's the proof that Tongan language closest to Proto-Poly language? There's no proof because it's lies. Samoan language is older. Okay. I'm not the one telling you, Jay. I'm telling you what the study said. The study said that the Tongic language is closer to the Proto-Polynesian language than Samoan. And one of the evidences that they point to is the glottal stop
Mm.
that is in the Tongan language. That is a feature that comes from the Proto-Polynesian language that is not found in the Samoan language. And the other thing that I I just thought about this myself. Can you still hear me, Mr.
Yep,
Atero?
yep. I can.
My headphones, I gotta switch to one headphone so the other one can charge.
Okay.
Um, is you know what Whamamafapau is? Have you ever heard that term?
Pau. No,
Yes.
no. What is that?
So the Whamamafapau is it's you know how you have the whakaua, the glottal stop that's like a
Yes.
line. The Whamamafapau is a sign. It was like a slanted in the air, and
Yeah.
it was to tell you where the tone of the wording should be. So
Ah.
where the syllables fall. Like in Spanish, it's automatically the second to last syllable is where the tone of the pronunciation of this, the emphasis of the spelling of it. In Tongan, there's a hamafapau, and you would put it in specific areas to say this is where I want the tone of your pronunciation to hang on, and it would tell you where that would be. I'm not aware of any other Polynesian language that had that in there. So, Jay, that's the evidence, Jay. Just just go look up the research yourself. And if you have an argument with the research, I'm not saying the research is perfect, but your beef is with the people who did the research, not with us. And
Mm,
he says a lot of the Tongan words were borrowed from other languages. Well,
we
if
were
we
all
were the only ones who were sovereign and we were the only ones with the written language that we developed from very early on, how can you say there are other borrowed languages? And even if I gave that to you, Jay, that just meant that the Tongans were traveling everywhere else and getting more words, which is saying it's an empire. Anyways,
mm,
we because of UTOL's comment, we indulged Jay there.
malo Jay.
Malo Jay, Ofatu Jay, man, we love you.
Yeah.
If you want us to visit on your next question, Jay, send us a digital kava bag by putting something in the super chat. Okay, so I'm going to read a question, Masi, and maybe you can answer it
Yep.
better than me because it's kind of referencing certain things.
Yeah.
In Samoa, we have what is known as a fa'alupenga. You've mentioned this a little bit.
Yeah.
Talatu'u, Angai Fanua, etc. in each district and village. Some districts and villages have what is known as langi to mark the beginning of something. Please don't talk on the topic you don't fully understand, respectfully. Any
Mm.
thoughts on that, Mr. Aotearoa?
Say, well, my thoughts on that. By is it she, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of Tangaloa, which is the residence in Tonga. So, like I said, I've been in Upolu, Savai, and Tutuila, American Samoa. I'm not coming this from nowhere. That Langi is a reference, and that Fa'alupenga, which is um important family titles that you recognize when it's almost like a when you're doing a speech to recognize families. You know how you the
La
Matapures to
Frakatapu?
iyo the Fagatapu and stuff. That's a reference to Langi to Tongatapu in that Fa'alupenga. And like I said, you, you can speak to the Tula Fales and every Tula Fale will have their different understanding, saying it's a Langi from Manua, if that's their understanding. But Tongatapu is much older, and we all know that Langi is in Tongatapu, and people will say it's from Langi in Tongatapu because that's where Tangaloa resides. So that's my comment there. I appreciate the comment from the Uso there. Any other comments, Tua?
No, I mean, didn't you mention that each village has a Fa'alupenga, but in the areas where the Tu'itonga traditionally resided, there are no Fa'alupengas there, which once
Yes.
again would say there's something going on there, something unique,
Yeah.
right? And that it's different. So
Yeah.
that would be the only thing that I would have a comment on there, Mr. Aotearoa. Here's another
Also.
interesting question. I will read it out to you and kind of get your thoughts on it.
Mhm.
Here we go. You two act like it's a competition. Who has the older titles? Who was Langi? Who was settled first? Blah, blah, blah. At least the guy is an actual scholar. You guys are nobodies.
Hey, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, there's no name, eh? There's no name. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
I did. This person is also really active on TikTok because
Okay.
it's almost the exact same flags on TikTok.
Yes. Well,
Oh, we
I'm
are
just
on
saying.
TikTok. It is the
Oh,
tick. Okay, so this guy is very active, or gal is
okay.
very active in our comments. But yes,
Okay. Hey, we're just sharing our thoughts. That scholar is just sharing his thoughts. I mean, like I said, if we live in the world that every scholar tells us how to live or what they say is gold, man, if we're gonna feel bad for ourselves. We're just speaking on what we say is incorrect or our ideas, and let the ideas. That scholar person has their idea. He can share it, just like I have my own ideas. Can share it and just let the ideas compete. And if you emphasize that the scholar gentleman or lady is more accurate, then so be it. I have no, don't listen to the nobody here. I'm just a person, just like to chat story, talk story, like they say in Hawaii. Just talk story, and let the people decide. But that's just my thoughts there. Tua, I don't know if you had anything else.
No, I mean, just because someone's a scholar doesn't mean they know everything. And just like the comment earlier, the scholars are those who speak the Fa'alupenga and all that other stuff. I would probably take their word more for it than the scholars themselves. Um,
Mm. Oh, here's the perfect definition that you gotta be careful with that scholar, right? We went to that video with the locals referring it to the Tonga and saying this was a close residence of the Tui Tonga when he stayed in that Palawuli village where that Star Mountain's out. And then out of all the scholars, that was not being like at least considered what the local people were saying. It was
oh
like
yeah.
they've kind of drifted off and just create their own kind of theory for something, and I don't know. They're making it very difficult to understand this structure when we all know from what the people were saying. Like, dude, I've had my father or grandfathers and tell me that this was a place where the Tuitonga lived, referring it to the Patonga. So, you know, that's what I would say to that gentleman. Just scholarly people have good research that they share and stuff, but like just be mindful, not take everything as gold, everything they share something. Just be careful, man. Like and that's an example what I just shared with the especially with Polynesian history is so unknown that you got to be careful what the scholarly has. Just because they have a PhD in Pacific Island studies doesn't mean that they're always correct. And that's why Tonga's unique. And Tonga's a bit unique in that sense of a part of the Polynesian branch or tree or kava plant that was not colonized. People don't have to have PhDs to speak on what has been passed on within their own family. You know what I mean? And can
Mm.
speak on that because we still maintain those stories and genealogies and ruins. In our case, with ruins that we've maintained within our family that we can speak on stuff on that. And many scholarlies don't have that access. So just because you write a paper in a nice AC room or whatever, that you still need access to certain materials and ruins and even oral histories from certain families that many of them have not. And people with those stories, if you're not within that village or family, they tend to be hesitant to just to give information like it's free air to breathe in. So that's just my thoughts there, Tua.
No, 100%. I agree. It's kind of funny how, like you mentioned, I thought that one video that we saw that, here you have these scholars coming in and they call something the Pule Malay Mount, and the lady goes, yeah, we never called
Yeah,
We never
yeah.
called. I've never heard the word Pulemele Mount. I don't even know where it comes from, right?
Mm,
And so, and then he says, "Yeah, the guy who worked this land and his family's been on this land. He just said it was the Pa Tonga, and it had to do with the Tui Tonga, that this was built for the Tui Tonga."
mm.
So that's why I think it's funny when they say, "Oh, the Fa Lupenga." Well, a lot of the oral history in Hamoa even pushes that the Tuitonga was there, and there's a lot of influence in that area. So I don't know. It to me, I just find it interesting that there's so much confusion out there. I mean, I even see online now that there are people pointing to Tahiti and
Tapu
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 Atea.
Atea as that's the origin of Polynesia. Just because some people over there say this is where we came to gather for Tangaloa and everything, and therefore that's where Polynesia comes from. So,
Mm,
hey, interesting, not our thought. I mean,
yeah.
the majority of the evidence seems to point that Eastern Polynesia was settled last, but this is why it's important to have these conversations. We have
Yes,
to
sir.
figure out, we can't all be right. right? I mean, we can't.
We can,
Tangaloa,
we can to make everyone feel good and feel happy and feel content. To we can.
mm, we can if we're not worried about the product. Yeah?
Yeah,
If we're not
yeah,
worried about the product and
yeah.
we just want to pat ourselves on the back, we don't have to worry about it.
No,
But
it's people who are okay with living in a not a truthful way. They're
yeah,
okay. You know what I
these are the
mean? That's the
people.
only thing. Yeah,
These are the people who want to live in altered reality and virtual reality.
yeah, yeah.
So okay, no, I think that'll cover our online comments for
Hmm.
now. But any closing thoughts, Mister Atearoa?
Closing thoughts. I appreciate the viewers joining us on this live digital conversation on the Polynesianized podcast. I appreciate your guys' support. We've seen tremendous growth and interactions and content sharing too of the Polynesianized podcast. I appreciate everyone who has a fond history of Polynesia and just wanting to understand more of our culture and our Polynesian heritage and the origins. This is what we're all about. The Polynesian Eyes always keeps an open mind, and we always listen to all ideas. Um, you know, I want to just have a special shout out to Water Bears and Tevita Toifoki and Shogun for their contribution to the live digital Kava session. And I hope this content was helpful for you all. And until the next one, but that's end for me. Malo.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is reminder: we will have another live digital conversation tomorrow evening, 9
Yeah.
p.m. Pacific time. We'll be having Rockstone join us, and we'll go over the Tui Lau installation, kind of going
Hmm.
into the ancient relationships of Tonga and Fiji.
Nice.
Once again, you can find Tongan relationships in Fiji to this day, Tongan relationships in Samoa to this day. And when I say relationship, not a story,
Hmm.
bloodlines,
Hmm.
right? Intertwined genealogy that exists to this day and throughout Polynesia. Want to thank, like you said, I want to thank everybody who contributed in the super chats and those asking about merch. We will be working on it. Probably come out with some t-shirts first when we get to it. Um, really appreciate the support, people online. As Mr. Atearoa mentioned, it's been a great 2 months. Pretty
Hmm.
exciting on YouTube, also on the various voice only or sound only platforms like Spotify and in those areas. And then obviously everybody's contributions on the super chats. Probably this live was our most productive live on super chats, and that is greatly appreciated
Yeah.
on the contributions of everyone. And then I did want to recognize the interviews that we're having. We did have a recorded episode with Devita Fale. It is in the editing process. It's just been a little more challenging than usual with travel, family reunions, and stuff to get the edits, but that is on the deck. And then also, Mr. Atearoa has set up some other interviews that we're looking to do. We do look forward to those. We think that adds a lot of value to everyone that listens. And as always, we'll finish with our common statements, or the ones, the ideas we always share, is to be bold and stay curious, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, and let
Yes,
the
sir.
ideas compete. And with
Yes,
that being
sir.
said, peace.
Peace.